Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video I'm bringing to you my January reading wrap up. I managed reading a total of 10 books in January. I plan to read a bit more actually, but because of some reasons the first couple of weeks of the month were a bit slumpy for me. So I took it slow, and despite that I was able to finish 10 books in Jan, which is a great count personally for me. And I watched the January wrap up from Elliot Brooks' channel just a few days back, and I'm drawing in one element from her videos alone here, using which I'm just going to list out all the books that I'm going to talk about in the wrap up before I get into the books, so that you get an idea of what all books you'll be hearing about in this video. I managed reading one series alone, and that series is the Winter Night Trilogy. The three books are The Bat, the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, and The Wither of the Witch by Katherine Arden. Then we have the book club pick for January, which is Asura by Anand Neelakantan. I tried Twilight by Stephenie Meyer, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Haddon, We Were Liars by Lockhart, The Family Upstairs by Jewell, which was my first read of the year, Coral Woman by Lubaina Bandukwala, and we have Landline by Rowell. So now without any further ado, let's get into the books right away. I'm going to talk about the books in the chronological order that I read them. So of these, the first one is The Family Upstairs by Jewell, which is an adult thriller. And I went into the book with the mindset that it'll be super dark in its tone, but it was not as dark as I expected and wanted it to be. In this book, we follow this house where 3 dead bodies are found, and despite that, there is this small baby also in the house who seems to be very normal and healthy. The bodies are in such a condition that the people must have died just a few days back, and there's no one else living inside that house. Despite that, this baby has been nursed and is healthy right now. So who took care of the baby? Who was responsible for the death of those 3 adults? And what all else happened in this house is the actual plot of the book. The main character whom we follow here is the baby who actually survived in that house, and we see the story unfolding from her point of view nearly 25 to 26 years after this incident has happened inside the house. It kept me guessing at a lot of points. Despite that, it was not nail-biting in any way for me. I expected that kind of edge of the seat vibes from this book, which it did not personally deliver for me. It might be just because of my expectations alone. Other than that, I don't have much complaints about this book, and I rated it 3.75 stars. Next, we have the first one inside the Winter Night Trilogy, which is The Bat and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I was super excited to start this series because I've heard really great things about the series from everyone that I trust on BookTube as well as Bookstagram, and this was out of the world. Okay, this is a great start for a series, and if you're someone who likes atmospheric books, this is one series that you need to try. And it's not just about the atmosphere alone, okay? The first book is quite slow. This book is slow because it is basically just about the setup. And for like 3/4 or 2/3 of the book, nothing maximum happens. It's just that we are getting anchored into this world. And everything happens all of a sudden, all at once in the last chunk of the book. I personally am okay with stuff like that because the thing which I expected out of this book is to have a really rich and compelling atmosphere, which it totally had. So in this series, we are following Vasya, who's this small girl from her birth, and she has this ability to see spirits and ghosts that are inspired from Russian folklore and culture. And this series also happens in a medieval kind of Russian setup, and it also draws in a lot of incidents from the real history of Russia during the medieval times in the 14th century. I am a person who does not have any knowledge about Russian culture or history. Despite that, I was able to enjoy this totally because it felt super authentic and very fresh for me. I'd highly recommend anyone to go forward and try this book. It will be slow, but trust me, once you get a grip of this world and seat yourself into it, I'm sure you'll not be able to put this book down at all, and I ended up rating this a full 5 stars wholeheartedly. The next book is something which I just read for pure joy and fun. Okay, I did not have any high expectations for this book. I was okay with either enjoying it or totally hating it, and I should say that I fell somewhere in between. The review for this book is also already out in the channel. I'll link it in the description as well as in the cards. You can go forward and check it out. And it is Twilight by Stephenie Meyer, which is the first book inside the Twilight saga. Everyone knows about Twilight, right? It is basically about the 17-year-old girl falling in love with a vampire. The vampire also seems to be falling particularly for her rather than any other human being. I've heard so much love as well as so much hate for this series, and after reading the book, I'm able to totally understand why, because there is this one fact about this book alone which just pissed the hell out of me, which I talked about in my review as well as discussion video, so you can check that out if you want to listen to my complete thoughts of this book. Otherwise, I should say that this was quite an entertaining book for me. It is mostly just about the 2 main characters, Bella and Edward, and apart from that, there's nothing huge about this book at all. Just like The Bat and the Nightingale, everything happens all at once in the last few pages of the book here also. Of the 400 pages of this book, I think nearly 350 pages is just Bella and Edward talking with each other, because of which we get to know a lot about them. But other than that, the book doesn't have anything much strong in my opinion. I will be continuing on with the series series because I can see the plot headed in a certain direction and I think it will be at least entertaining if I do not end up liking it. So I ended up rating this one 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next we have a mystery book which is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. Now I picked up this book because the first book, The Family Upstairs, was quite a bit disappointing for me because it did not deliver what I wanted. And the second book, The Bear and the Nightingale, was quite slow and it took a lot of time for me to read. So I wanted something to read just quick like this. So I went forward and picked this book up. It is very short and I was able to finish this in just like 2 sittings or so. This book is about this dog that gets killed and the main character is actually the neighbor of the owner of the house in which this dog has died. The main character is a 15-year-old boy and he has quite a bit of mental health issues which are really beautifully explained by the author here from that own character's point of view. How this boy ends up starting to investigate the murder of that dog and whether he solves it or not is the plot of this book. While he is doing that, he gets to know a lot more about his own parents, his family and his surroundings. It is really well done, but if you ask me, the plot of this book is not that important for me. It's just about the exploration of the main character here which was done on a different level of good personally for me. I was quite disappointed for the plot because I was expecting a mystery out of this book which it did not deliver. So I ended up rating this 4 stars even though I loved the depiction of the character so much. Next we have the second book inside the Winter Night trilogy which is The Girl in the Tower. Oh, this one is quite different from the first book because in the first book, as I said before, nearly 3/4 of the book is just the setup. But here a lot of stuff happens, okay? The first book basically just happens in this one small village alone. But here the world just explodes and it just shows us how vast and huge it is. The author makes a really good job of exactly depicting this world in front of our eyes. That there is quite a bit of description, but it is very easy to read and the writing of the author is also just so beautiful. Okay, if you're a person who likes the beauty of words, especially when it comes to reading books like this in fantasy, this is one series you need to try because the writing of the author is just, it's just chef's kiss level of good. I've heard that it has beautiful writing, but only after reading this one I was able to understand how beautiful it is. At the same time, the plot also develops here incredibly well and our main character comes into great form over here. She's really good at the first book itself, but while you get into this one, you just are able to get that main character energy absolutely out of her. Now, the first book just pulled the rug from under my feet and made me fall in love with it, and this one also followed in that line. Even with that, the first book is a bit more favorite for me compared to this one because of that beautiful setup. So I ended up rating this one 4.75 stars. Next we have a YA psychological thriller. I want to read more thrillers this year, guys. Okay, that's the reason why I've tried one thriller as well as one mystery before this book itself. And I've heard really great things about this book. That's why I picked it up. And it is Beware Liars by Lockhart. I had really high expectations getting into this book. And I should say that it also delivered a lot of it while I was reading it. But I end up hating the ending of this book, okay? I know that the ending is a huge twist and many people fall in love with the book just because of that ending. But I personally think that the ending of this book just even totally shook up the genre and changed the genre of the book as a whole for me. But apart from the ending, I like the rest of the book very much. Thrillers usually build up towards the climax, right? So when I don't get the ending or climax that I wanted, it always ends up pissing me off, and it happened with this book especially. I can say that more than Twilight, I did not have a good taste in my mouth after reading this book because, it just pissed me off very incredibly well. I'm not saying that it is a bad book in any way. It builds up in a really nice way. It shows us the main character as well as all the other characters whom she is traveling the story with in a really proper way. And if you're someone who liked the White Lotus series in HBO, you should try this one because it gives the exact same kind of vibes. While I just read like 1 or 2 chapters of the book itself, that is the thing which came to my mind. It feels just like the White Lotus. So yeah, apart from the ending, I liked the rest of the book, so I rated it 3 stars. Next we have my book club pick for January, and I'm so glad that I picked this book up for January because it was incredibly well written and it is one book which needs to be discussed. Okay, so I think it's perfect for my book club, and the book is Asura, Tale of the Vanquished by Anand Neelakantan. Okay, I had such a great time reading this book and it took quite a while for me to finish reading it. Okay, I think I was reading it for nearly 3 weeks. And the beginning of the book was a bit difficult for me to get through. I should say that the first 100 to 150 pages, I had to push myself to read the book. But after that point, I just got the vibe of the book and how the author was trying to push the story towards us. And after that, I totally fell in love with it. You can see that it has yellow edges, right? It did not have this originally. I just went forward and did it for myself. I learned how to paint the edges of a book just by watching certain videos on YouTube, and it worked out pretty well for me in this book. I didn't even put in the tabs for this book until yesterday when I painted the book because I wanted this book to have this particular color combination. Since the cover has a lot of yellow and red, I wanted to give a nice sandalwood yellow for the edges, and I had to put red tabs in it. You can just see how beautiful it is, right? Again, I'm not telling that much about this book because I want to discuss it as much in detail as I can can in my review and discussion video, which I'll be filming very shortly. I'm sorry that it's getting a bit delayed, but in the first half of the month, I'm pretty sure that you'll be getting the video for this book, and it will also be quite a long one. This is basically just the retelling of the Ramayana, but keeping Ravana as the main character, as the protagonist, and while doing that, the author does not hesitate to show us his good as well as bad sides as such crudely, okay? And it takes one version of the Ramayana and explains it to us in favor of Ravana. Okay, it's not like he's totally good and Rama's totally bad, or Rama's totally good and he's totally bad as well. It just shows us how they are as human beings, as characters, and their own version of themselves. Especially while reading this book from the point of view of Ravana, I was not able to see the Ramayana that I have learnt and known from my childhood in the same way ever again. It is easily a life-changing book for me, and there are multiple instances in this book while I was reading itself. I could feel the tears in my eyes because it was very, very true. It was brutally honest, and sometimes I just had to keep the book aside because I was not able to handle the amount of honest information and fact just thrown in my face. Even the writing of the author is super rich yet easy to understand. I don't know how he ended up doing it. It's easily one of the best books that I've read, and I'm very glad that I read it in Jan. If not for The Bear and the Nightingale, I'm sure that this could have ended up as my most favorite read of January. So with all these thoughts, I want to say that I ended up enjoying this and loving this to the core in every way possible, and I want to read more and more books by this author, which I already have in my shelf also now. And I ended up rating this one also 4.5 stars. Next, we have a very small illustrated children's book, which is Coral Woman by Lubaina Bandukwala, illustrated by Sankit Peter. It is a very tiny book. I think it just runs for like 50 pages or so, and it has a ton of illustrations here and there. They look very, very beautiful. I think the MRP of the book is just around 300 rupees or so, and I got it on Amazon during a sale for like 50 or 60 rupees, and it is totally worth it, okay? I did not have a high expectations for this book because it is basically a children's book, so it is going to be in a very surface level for everything. And here we follow our main character, Uma Mani, who's an actual real-life person, and how she ended up developing a love towards coral reefs and corals in general, and started taking steps to conserve the coral reefs of our country. It provides a lot of information about where the coral reefs in our country are available and how they are being affected by the human activities in these different regions. Of the 4 places that she tells in this book, 3 of them are the southern half of the country, and there is only one in the northern half. It was quite informative for me, but more than that, I cannot say that there was anything that impressive about this book personally for me. I liked the illustrations, and I spent a lot of time just looking at them because they were very beautiful. I also started painting for the past 2 months, so I just drank in those illustrations with my eyes to get inspired for my own art. And I ended up rating this one 3 stars. Next, we have an adult contemporary book, and it is Landline by Rainbow Rowell. I ended up listening to the audiobook of this one parallelly while working, and I should say that it was quite well and nicely done for me, okay? It is not anything out of the world, it was not something that had a huge impact on me or anything, but it was nice to read in the background as a cozy story. And if I had known already, I would have read this in December itself because it is a Christmas story in which we follow our main character Georgie, who's in her early 30s, and she's the mother of 2 kids. There's this particular Christmas alone where she's not able to spend the holidays with her family because she is tied up with work. And while she is doing her work, she just ends up calling the landline of her husband's home. And instead of her own husband picking the phone up right now, her husband from 15 years back, when they met and were dating for the first time, ends up picking the call, and she ends up talking to him when he was 15 years old. She lives a lot of her past life and understands how her family is much more important to her compared to anything else in the world, and how they both reconcile all the issues that they've been facing in their marriage in all these years is basically the plot of this one. As I said before, it is nothing out of the world, it is not excellent or extraordinary, but it is definitely a fun, cozy and entertaining book. If you can read it during the Christmas time, because it will give you the perfect vibes during that time. And I ended up rating this one also 3.5 stars. And the last book that I read in January is the finale to the Winter Night trilogy, which is The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden again. And I should say, of the 3 books, the first book is my most favorite, this is my second favorite, and the second book is my third favorite. The reason why I loved this book is because it ended up closing all the things that are explained in the first and second books really beautifully here. None of the subplots that were made use of in the first 2 books for the development of the story as well as the characters was left off here at any instant at all. The author made it a point to clearly end each and every storyline and subplot without leaving any open ends towards the end. I personally love it when I feel very satisfied and, ending up knowing everything by the end of the series. And I got that exact feeling when I finished reading this book because the author closes up every thread. She makes us clearly see that these are all the things that have happened, and I even forgot a subplot from the first and second books when I was reading the third book, and when it was brought up and was to be tied up towards the end, I was just super astonished of how well it has been written and how Rowell has been woven into the story. I'm so glad that I read it in January also because it's just the first week of February and it's already hot in Chennai here. And I wanted to read the series in the winter of this year itself because I know if I put it off any longer, I'll not be reading it for a long time. So if you're planning to read the series, please read it during the winter time because it is the perfect time to read it. And trust me, it'll just take you out into a super cold, beautiful and rich world. I ended up rating this book also 4.75 out of 5 stars, and the entire series as a whole is easily a 5-star series for me. So yes guys, these are all the 10 books that I managed to read in January, and I'm planning to read a lot more in February, so you can expect much more books and a much vaster variety in February because I'm intentionally reading different genre from this year because I just want my palette to be as much wide as it can be. If you've read any of the books that I've talked about in this video, please do let me know down in the comments how you feel about them. And if you're going to pick up any of the books that I've talked about, tell me that also down there. And if you enjoyed watching this video and found it useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up as well as share it to your friends. If you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.